Down the world's darkest highways into the vast unknown, yours truly, David Barnabas Spector, leads you on a unique journey into the minds of professional wrestlers, paranormal investigators, and an array of human and inhuman oddities. This is Radio Dark. And on this debut episode, I am joined by the most unlikely of guests. He is perhaps my greatest rival from the world of professional wrestling. The only man that I have stepped inside the ring with as an active competitor. A man that I went to war with at Origins 2. Ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, I am joined today by future great wrestling star, William Wolfe. Will, thank you for joining us here today on Radio Dark.
Yeah. You know, if you'd have told me a couple months ago at Origins 2, after I got done ripping your head off, that I'd be sitting here talking on the phone with you when we're all stuck inside our house, I don't know if I'd have believed you.
Times change. People change, Will. And you know, I'm willing to let bygones be bygones. You know, I'm the first to admit, Will, that even though there were some things in that match that were a bit out of my control, and we'll get into that later, but at the end of the day, I have to say that begrudgingly I have to admit you were the better man. There's no doubt about that. You beat me. You beat me 1-2. You know, I tapped out. You choked me out with the guillotine. You know, you were the better man. So I have nothing else that I can say about that. There's no doubt that William Wolfe is one of the toughest individuals in the entire Future Great Wrestling locker room. And to be honest, there's no way in hell that I ever would have signed a contract to wrestle William Wolfe at Origins 2. Billy, that nincompoop, that numbskull, that was a whole different story. But accepting a match with William Wolfe, that's something that yours truly, David Barnabas Spector, would never do. But, you know, that's ancient history. That's the past. You know, world events, things change, people change. You know, and I wanted to make sure that starting off Radio Dark, that we started it off on the right foot, on the right note, Will. And I wanted to give you an opportunity because, you know, I saw something in you a long time ago. I saw a ferociousness, a tenacity. I saw, you know, money. I saw a star. And, you know, I don't think that people really know much about you. So I wanted to give you this opportunity, this platform to talk to your fans, to talk to the people, to give them some insight on exactly who William Wolfe is. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you broke into the business. You were trained by legendary trainer here in Cincinnati, Cody Hawk. What year did you break in, Will?
I started training in 2016, early 2016, and my first match was against J.C. Flash at LSC in, I believe, January of 2017.
You know, so you've been grinding away, applying your trade now for quite some time.
A little bit.
You know, you mentioned your first opponent being J.C. Flash. Talk a little bit about your relationship with Mr. Flash.
J.C. Flash. What's there to be said about him that he hasn't said about himself already? Him and I met in the 7th grade. We've been best friends. I actually, a good story about him and how him and I met. In the 7th grade, all of my periods got changed for some reason. Every single class that I had got moved, and you know, from the start of the day to the end of the day. And I noticed that in all of my new classes, there was this really nerdy kid. I was a small goth kid. I was wearing probably the big bondage pants and had some eyeliner on, I imagine. It hasn't changed much in that regard. And yeah, there was this nerdy kid that kind of reminded me of Napoleon Dynamite a little bit in every single one of my classes. And, we started talking one day and found out that he was into pro wrestling and I was into pro wrestling, so we bonded over that a little bit. And that, I wasn't allowed to stay up late enough to watch Raw and Nitro. Well, probably just Raw at that point. So he would recap everything that happened to me the night before. And then one day he asked me if I wanted to come over and play some video games with him. Wrestling, it's probably SmackDown, Shut Your Mouth, or something like that. And I went over to his house and realized as I was pulling up to his apartment complex that I used to live in that same complex. And as I was walking up to his apartment door to knock on the door, I realized that I used to live in that exact same apartment. And as he was walking me back to his room, I realized that his room used to be my room. And we have been best friends ever since then, although things are a little estranged between us right now because of the paths and decisions that he's made in FGW. But,
sounds like quite the bromance.
Yeah, they're better or worse. If I needed something, he would be there and vice versa.
It's interesting how the love of professional wrestling brings the most unlikely of characters together. Here we are today, William Wolf, and yours truly, David Barnabas Spector, talking about pro wrestling. Who would have thunk it? But then you and your relationship with JC Flash, after our encounter at Origins 2, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Flash was the first man that you decimated on your current path of destruction. That says a lot, Will. That says and tells me exactly why I saw something in you in regards to being a wrecking machine, a killer in the ring. The fact that you would do that to your own friend? Very, very interesting.
I would walk through anyone who stepped in my face and said what he said to me.
Very interesting.
And I would do it again. I do it at his house. I do it at my house. I do it at FGW. He knows it, and I know it.
Well, Mr. Flash, if you're listening, I know he's always been a long time proponent of yours truly and Darkness Worldwide. I appreciate the support, Mr. Flash. I hope that you are healing from the wounds that you have obtained from your battles with Mr. Wolf, and hopefully we will see you soon at the FGW Arena in Hamilton. But beyond your initial training, talk a bit about your experiences, not just training with Cody Hawk, but training with an individual that was very near and dear to a lot of us. An individual that unfortunately we lost last year, and I know he had a hand in helping to train you. And that man was Zeta, Super Zeta to be exact. If you wouldn't mind, Will, if you could please talk a little bit about your memories of Super Zeta.
Man, this is a hard subject, I think, for a lot of us in FGW. He was, as you said, very near and dear to all of us. So when I first started training with Cody, I would hear stories about this luchador that would come in from Mexico. He's one of Cody's friends and would help train him sometimes. And everybody that was already in the class, Douglas Andrews, Shea Solo, Logan Blackheart, Sean Reed, all of those that had already met him, they only had good things to say, but they also, he was like a legend. He was like, oh man, it was like, they were telling scary stories about him. Like, just wait. You think it's hard to train under Cody, just wait till Zeta gets here. And I just, for months, dreaded the day that this mysterious Super Zeta came in. And then he walked in the door and he was 5'5". He talked a little like this. He had a very soft voice. And I was like, how is this the guy that everybody's been talking about? Until I stepped in the ring with him, and that's when I knew that he was the Super Zeta that everyone had mentioned. Cody's made me throw up a time or two. Zeta made me throw up every single time we trained together. I don't know what the difference is between how training works in the States and in Mexico, but that guy took professional wrestling more seriously. And this isn't to put down Hawk or anybody else, but I've never met anybody that worked as hard as Super Zeta. He was wrestling until he died of cancer.
Yes.
Nobody knew he even had cancer. He just wrestled and wrestled and wrestled and wrestled until one day he was gone.
Yeah, his love of the business is unparalleled, and you're absolutely right, Will, in that it's the fact that he was doing what he absolutely loved for as long as he could possibly do it. That's amazing to me. I didn't know Zeta nearly as well as a lot of the Future Great Wrestling crew. I certainly didn't know him as well as you knew him, Will. I was only able to share a wing with him very briefly on a few different occasions, training, learning the craft, learning to protect myself from individuals such as yourself. And the little bit of education that I was able to receive from him will last a lifetime. And he definitely had an impact on me, even if I didn't know him, that well personally. Just the respect for him as a performer, for him as a trainer, just simply for him as a man is unmatched. And, last year, we all took it very hard. You went above and beyond and offered to provide some memorial tattoos of Zeta to our crew, donating the proceeds to his widow. And, regardless of where we stood at that point, where everything happened, Will, I always thought that was an amazing thing that you did. And it's a great reminder to everyone that received one of those tattoos from you that, and it's the reason why we're bringing it up right now in this interview is to keep his name alive, to keep his memory alive. And there were a lot of great memories, a lot of awesome times. When I was there, previous to me fully showing the world my Barnabas self, when I was photographing and studying and learning the roster, I would study Zeta's matches, and they were always incredibly entertaining, and he was an amazing performer in the ring. But, aside from training by Zeta, training with Cody Hawk, hitting the highways and byways with Mr. JC Flash, you also had a long-time tag team called Man and Wolf. If you would, talk a bit about that tag team with Douglas Andrews.
Douglas Andrews and myself were opposites. He liked wrestling and popularity and money, and I liked beating people's asses. And that's why him and I worked so well. On paper, you wouldn't think that it would work. He was this clean-cut guy, nicely trimmed beard, nice hair. I am me, and I've got my makeup and my beard and my hair and my tattoos. And, at the previous company that we were at before FGW, we kept getting put in tag teams together just randomly, and through whatever reason, we kept winning them. We had a natural chemistry. Actually, Douglas Andrews was the very first match that I ever had in training. We were training one day, and Cody asked some of the students that had been around a little bit longer to pick people to have matches with, and Douglas Andrews picked me. And we were pretty close from then on, and we kept getting put in the tag teams and decided to make it official, and we went undefeated for a year at the previous company that we were at before FGW, and then we came into FGW, beat some ass in the very first ever Royal Rumble, or inaugural Battle Royal at FGW. I think he was number one, Cedric was number two, Cedric Blackhawk, and I was number three. And our FGW tag career started there and ended shortly thereafter with the creation of the Code, which you should be familiar with since you chose sides in that battle as well.
Now, hold on now, because you're blurring lines there, Will, because I had no part in the Code. I had nothing to do with the Code. You look back at the history of FGW, I had zero to do with the Code. What the Code did, however, was provide unique opportunities to myself and those under the